In this example, we have two pieces of information about each of 139 television news stories about crime, that have been analyzed for the study. The first thing we have in column A is an ID number for each story. You can see it ranges from 1 up through 139. And then in column B, we have the race of the person who was the victim in whatever crime the story talked about. The race can be coded as either white, black, Latino, or other. And what we're going to do here is we're going to find out how many of each race victim we have portrayed on television in the news, and see whether and how well those proportions match up with crime data about how many of each type of person are actually the victim of some kind of crime. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is find out how many of each race we have in this column B. Now, what you could do is go through and count them all up. As you can see, they're scrambled as they would be if you were just watching these sequentially over, say, a couple months' time. So that makes counting them up kind of time-consuming. So why don't we figure out a way to get Excel to do that for us? And it turns out there's a pretty easy way to do it using something called a pivot table. Now, to get a pivot table going, you need to find the Insert tab right here. All right, click that. And over here on the far left, you'll see something called Pivot Table right there. Click that and scroll down until you see, let's get back for you, Pivot Table right there underneath on the little drop-down box. Okay, so you click that. Do that one more time. There we go. And here's the dialog box you're looking for. The first thing you need to do is highlight all the data you're going to deal with. Now, Excel took a guess here and correctly highlighted everything in columns A and B. In case it doesn't get it right, you can click this little spreadsheet icon right here and highlight the data that you want to use. Notice that I'm including the column headings at the top. So I'm just dragging down with the mouse, highlighting all 139 cases, and then clicking the red X for OK. All right. And let's see. I want to place this pivot table in the existing worksheet. Okay, that's what I would prefer. So make sure that radio button's checked. And then let's put it right here in column C1, right next to the data we're dealing with. So let's click OK there. All right. Now notice that we have over here a little dialog box that's waiting to be filled in. This is pretty easy to do. It's kind of a drag and drop operation. What you need to do is find the variable that you're wanting to summarize. In this case, it's race, and drag it down here. I just pointed at it with the mouse and I clicked on the left mouse button. I'm holding it down as I drag, and then I'm going to turn it loose right here in the row labels box. Okay. And then I'm going to take the same variable, race, and put it here in the sum of values box. That's what that little symbol right there means. That's a summation symbol. So it means it's going to add stuff up in that box right there. Okay. And notice as I was doing that, Excel was busy over here giving me some information. And what it gave us was, well, simply the number of victims you had in these 139 stories who were black, the number of victims who were Latino, the number of victims who were some other race, and the number of victims who were white, and the total of 139. That's a whole lot faster than counting them all, isn't it? So there we go. That's a pivot table. You'll see more of pivot tables later. I've just clicked here to get rid of the dialog that was over here. All right, so that's the first thing we need to get in order to do this analysis. Now, we know from our other research, our actual crime statistics that we got, that given the proportions of different races that are the victims of crimes, what we really should have expected to see, get this right, what we should have expected to see in the news content, if the news were accurately reflecting what's going on in the population, we would have seen about this many black victims of crime, 28. We would have seen about this many Latino victims of crime, 54. And we would have seen about 5 victims of crime who were some other race, and we would have seen about 13 victims who were white. Okay, So this is what we saw in the television news content. This is what things look like in terms of the actual crime statistics, and there's obviously a difference there. That you had many more whites featured in the crime coverage than there actually were white victims in actual crimes, and you had many fewer Latinos featured in crime stories than there actually were Latino crime victims. So you have some apparent distortion going on here in terms of news media content. All right, so in the next video, we'll look at how to compare these numbers and see whether they're different enough to, again, suggest that that the difference here is non-random, that there's something systematic going on here that causes this distortion we're seeing.